Welcome back to On the Same Page. We are on Daf Gimel Amud Aleph, 3a of Maseches Megillah. We are starting from 6 lines from the bottom of the page, the very last word on the line, which is Va'avoda. The Gemara is discussing what takes precedence in terms of weighing various mitzvos. So the Gemara had learned out from the pasuk Mishpacha, that every family is obligated, was coming to teach me that even Kohanim and Leviim will stop what they're doing, their service in the Beis HaMikdash, in the temple, and would go and hear the Megillah. And the Gemara said, based on that, in the house of Rabbi, they said, Rabbi Yudah Nasi, that the same would be true for Talmud Torah, for Torah learning, because it's a Kal V'chomer. It's logically deduced that if we stop doing avoda in the Beis HaMikdash, we stop doing the temple service to go hear the Megillah, all the more so we should stop learning Torah, which isn't as significant, important as, of course it's very important, but not, it doesn't weigh up to avoda. That was the assumption. Ask the Gemara, Va'avoda chamura mitalmud Torah? Is avoda, his service in the Beis HaMikdash, really more chamur, more serious, more stringent than learning Torah v'haksiv? But we have a pasuk that seems to contradict this, or really a drasha on a pasuk. Pasuk says, "Vayhi biyos Yoshua b'Yericho." It was when Yehoshua was in Yericho, when Yoshua was getting ready to conquer the city of Yericho. Vayisa einav, and he raised up his eyes, Vayar, and he saw Vinei ish omed ulenegdo, and he saw a man standing opposite him. And then we say v'gomer, and so on. And the so on is actually important. The pasuk says there was a man standing there, v'charbo shlufa biyado, and his sword was drawn. And Yoshua went to him and he said, Halano ata im litzarenu, are you with us or are you part from our enemies? Vayomer, and he said, Lo, ki ani sar tzva Hashem. He said, no, I am an officer of the army of Hashem. Ata vasi, now I have come. Vayipol Yoshua al panav, and Yoshua fell in front of his face, arza on the ground, vayishtachu, and he bowed, vayomer lo, and he said, Madani medaber al avdo, what does my master say to his servant? That's the psukim. Now back in the Gemara, so the Gemara says, Vinei ish omed ulenegdo, there was a man standing opposite him, vayishtachu, and then it quotes the end where Yoshua bows to him. Now the Gemara interjects, really not the point of bringing it in, but he says, V'hechi avid hachi, how could he have done this? Rashi says, how could he have bowed to him, which was seemingly a form of greeting? V'ha'amar Yeshua ben Levi, asr la'adam shi'itein shalom l'chaver b'layla. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi said, one is forbidden from greeting his friend in the nighttime. Bowing, from saying shalom, some saying hello, and this bowing was some kind of form of greeting, and you're not allowed to greet your friend at night. Why? Chayshinan shema shedu. There's a concern that maybe it's a shade, maybe it's a demon. So when we see somebody at night, at least according to this, we're not supposed to greet them, because I don't think this gets ruled halacha practically, but you're not supposed to greet them because they might be a shade, they might be a demon. Okay? So how could Yoshua bow to him? So the Gemara says, Shani Hasam, no, there it was different. Da'amar le, because he had said, this angel, really, that he met, had said, Ki ani sar tzva Hashem, I am an officer of the army of God, and therefore he identified himself. He wasn't a shade, he was an angel. So that's how Yoshua knew that it was okay to bow to him. Ask the Gemara of Dilma Mishakri, but maybe he was lying. Maybe he was a demon and he was lying. No, Gemiri de lo mafki shem shemayim batala. It's known that a shade, a demon, would not express God's name livatala in vain. And so even shadim play to certain rules, and they don't express God's name in vain. and therefore, if he said, I'm Sar Tzva Hashem, I'm an officer of the army of Hashem, and he said Hashem's name, so he must not bring a demon. A demon wouldn't have said that. So that's how Yoshua knew, and that's why he was able to greet him. Now, fine. So Amar Lo, the Gemara says that the following conversation took place. The angel said to him, Emesh bitaltem tamid shel ben arbaim. Yesterday, you nullified, you didn't bring the afternoon carbon tamid, the daily offering that we bring twice a day, morning, afternoon. You didn't bring the afternoon offering. Ve'achshav, and now bitaltem Talmud Torah. And now you're being mevatel Torah, you're not learning. So, now, where does this conversation come from? So, the Gemara is going to continue the conversation, which will actually help us, but basically, as Rashi explains, from the answer, from the response, from what he did say, we can figure out what Yoshua asked him, what the conversation was. So what the pasuk does say is that he said, Atavasi, I've come now, and so I've come now. And the Gemara is going to say what he was saying was, I'm talking about what I've come for now, as we'll see in a moment, and from that we can learn that he was really challenging him on two things. And Yeshua said, well, which one is the more serious one? He's like, Atavasi, it's on the one that happened now, most recently, is the problem, So what he was telling him was, yesterday when you came to the city, you didn't bring the carbon tamid. Now once it was evening and they laid siege to the city of Yericho, you weren't going to fight at night. So you should have brought the afternoon tamid, that should have been brought then. And then, once it was nightfall, you should have learned Torah, because you're not going to fight then. So you can lay the siege, but you're not going to fight. So you, two problems. You didn't bring the carbon and you didn't learn Torah. Tosfos says, where do we get these two things from? Fine, he challenged him on something. There was some conversation, but where do we get these two things from? So Tosfos says, because Yoshua said to him, Halanu ata im litzarenu. Are you for us or are you for our enemies? Now Tosfos says that what he was telling him was, he was asking him this question, which one, I guess the angel had said to him what he was here for, and or maybe he understood the angel was here because they had not done something. He knew what they had not done. So he said, Halanu, was it for Lanu? Was it for Lanu? What's Lanu? So, because it says Torah Tiva Lanu Moshe. Moshe commanded us Torah. So how Lanu? Was it for Lanu, for Torah Tiva Lanu Moshe? Or was it Litzarenu, because the Karbanos protect us, Mitzarenu, from our enemies, a reference to maybe certain psukim. Actually, it doesn't say it. They reference other Gemaras. But it's coming from that. So Yoshua said, Halanu ata im litzarenu, which in the Pashup Shah, in simple reading, means, are you for us or for our enemies? But from there, the Gemara interpreter, he was asking, did you come to us, are you here to rebuke me on Lanu, on not learning Torah Tivana Moshe, or litzarenu, or for not bringing karbanos, which protect us? Okay, so back to the Gemara says, Amar Lo, the bottom line, he said to him, so Yoshua said to him, which one are you here for? Amar Lo, he said, Atavasi, I've come now. Meaning for the one that was most recent, which was most recent, the one in the evening, was that they didn't learn Torah. That's the problem. That's why I had to come and rebuke you. So Miyad, so then what happened? It says, Vayolim Yoshua b'laylahu b'socha emek. And Yoshua, he slept that night in the emek, in the valley. Now here the Gemara does something interesting because it's kind of combining two different psukim. Because what it actually says in the context of Yericho, of surrounding Yericho, it says Vayelech Yehoshua Balaylahu B'socha Emek. It says he went that night in the Emek, in the valley. Later, earlier, it had said, when they had attacked Ai, it had said, Vayalan Yoshabayalu B'socha Am. He rested that night amongst the nation. So it doesn't say Ba'emek. So anyways, it somehow combined the two psukim. Rashi and Tosas try to get into it, but Tosas says that's what the Shas sometimes does, and it shortens psukim and combines them. So fine. So it's making a drasha. So what it's telling us is that he was in the Emek. He was in literally like the valley, in the depths. But what does that teach me? Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan says, top next page, Milamed, it's to teach me Shelon be'omka shel halacha. It's to teach me that he not slept, but he passed the night. That's literally what it means to pass the night. Lina, he passed the night in omka shel halacha, in the depths of halacha. They went right into learning. When this Malach came and said, you were mevatel Torah, and that's why he came with a sword drawn, so the response was they learned. Okay. Then what do we see from here? So says the Gemara, Ve'amar Rabbi Shmuel bar Unya, so Shmuel bar Unya says, Gadol Talmud Torah Yosem Ekravas Tamidin. We see that Talmud Torah is more great than bringing the Karban Tamid. Shenamar, as it says, Atavasi. I came now, meaning I came for what was most recent. That's what I'm here to rebuke you for. Which was what? Not that he didn't bring the Karban. It was that he didn't learn Torah. So you see that Torah is greater and more important than Karbanos. So now we have a problem, or a contradiction, or actually really just a challenge to what we had said before. Up till now we had assumed that Beis Rebbe, they had assumed that Talmud Torah, that Avoda is greater than Talmud Torah, and therefore they said if you stop Avoda to read the Megillah, then you should stop learning Torah to read the Megillah. But now it seems that we see that Torah is greater, so you shouldn't be able to draw that conclusion. Says the Gemara, Lo Kashya. No, it's not a contradiction. Hadirabim v'hadiyachid. One refers to the learning of the public, and one refers to individuals. It's true, if in terms of the entire nation, what they're involved in, which like it was by Yoshua, so there, the Torah learning of the entire nation is more important than the avoda that they would have done. But on an individual level, any individual, their Torah learning, avoda is greater than an individual's Torah learning, and you can make that kal v'chomer. Okay. Ask the Gemara, Udiyachid kal. Is it true? Is it true that the learning of a Yachim individual is not as great as avoda, as service in the Beis HaMikdash? V'hatnan. But we have the following Mishnah. The Mishnah says, it's in Moed Katan. It deals with the laws of mourning. Mourning, mourning. So it says, Nashim b'moed ma'anos. So women, if there's somebody dies on a moed, on a holiday, or at least chol moed, ma'anos, they're allowed to give a hesped. They're allowed to eulogize. Avalo metapchos. They can't beat their chests. They can't be metapchos al liban, Rashi says. I think others understand it means banging their hands together, and not like clapping in celebration, but it was a way of like expressing sadness. And they could do this together. It when we say ma'anos here, I don't think it's like we don't eulogize on Yom Tov. It's some kind of like expression of sadness though, and done together, done in unison, and it's saying that they're allowed to do that, but they can't do this banging. Rabbi Shmuel says, Im hayu smuchos lamita mitapchos. If they're near the bed, near the coffin, so then they're allowed even to do the mitapchos in the funeral procession, and they can even do the banging. So that's on Chol Moed. But Birashe, and maybe Yantif itself too, where if they have a funeral on Yantif. Birashe Chadashim b'Chanukah v'Purim, on Rosh Chodesh, on Chanukah and on Purim. So then Me'anos u'Metapchos. Then they could do both. They can be Me'anos. They can mourn in unison. And they can also bang their chests or their hands, whatever it is. Now, Bezeh v'Zeh, the Bach takes out the word aval and changes it to einan. Actually, Bezeh v'Zeh, einan mekonanos. But on neither of them can they be mekonin. Mekonin is more like a funeral dirge, like a song, so that you can't do neither on Moed nor on Rosh Chodesh or Purim or Chanukah. That you can't do at all. The Amar Rabba Bar Huna, but Rabba Bar Huna says regarding this, a Moed b'fnei Talmud Chacham. There's no Moed in front of a Talmud Chacham. So if it's a Talmud Chacham, so then even on a Moed, all these practices of mourning would be allowed. And Kol Shekein Chanukah Purim. Certainly on Chanukah and Purim it would be allowed. So, so what do we see here? We see here the great significance of a yachid, of the Torah learning of a person, that you are allowed to be maspid them, to do a full-out funeral service for a Talmud Chacham, and it says certainly, even on Moed, certainly on Chanukah and Purim. And it sounds like, even if it's going to prevent them from being able to read the Megillah on Purim, they're still allowed to do this. That's what apparently the question is. Even though it's going to prevent them from reading Megillah. So I'm not sure why that's so clear. Like it just says they're allowed to do it. It doesn't say if it contradicts reading the Megillah, but okay, that's how Tosfos understands the question. To which the Gemara answers, it's different. Kavod Torah kamarta. You're talking there not about Torah learning, you're talking about honoring a Torah scholar. So that Kavod Torah diachid chamor, Talmud Torah diachid kal. The honor of Torah, the Kavod Torah of an individual, that's very chamor, that's very stringent and can override Megillah. But the learning Torah of an individual, not as stringent and will not override Megillah. Okay, Amar Rava. So Rava says, now he's going to kind of name off a bunch of different comparisons and what we know and what we don't know about them. So, Pshitali, he says, it's obvious to me, Avoda Mikra Megillah, if you have a question of which should take precedence, Avoda, service in the Beis HaMikdash, or Mikra Megillah, or reading the Megillah, so Mikra Megillah Adif. Megillah takes precedence. How do we know? B'Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina, from the teaching of Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina, which was the teaching that we learned from the pasuk Mishpacha, that every family reads the Megillah, even the Kohanim and the Leviim, who might be involved in service, they stop to read the Megillah. So Megillah takes precedence over Avoda. Talmud Torah, Mikra Megillah. What about Torah learning and reading the Megillah? Mikra Megillah Adif. Mikra Megillah, reading the Megillah takes precedence. How does he know? Midasamchu shal beis Rabbi. Because that was what we said, the house of Rebbe, they relied on this. They said, they made a kal v'chomer, if Avoda overrides Megillah, so certainly, if Megillah overrides Avoda, then certainly Megillah will override learning Torah, at least of an individual. What about the following? Talmud Torah u'meis mitzvah. If you have a person learning, then you have a meis mitzvah. Meis mitzvah is a dead body that nobody is available to take care of it. So nobody's going to deal with the burial. So a person's learning Torah and there's a meis mitzvah. So which takes precedence? Meis mitzvah, the body takes precedence. Caring for the meis, for the dead, takes precedence. Midatanya, from the following brisa, it says, Mivatlin Talmud Torah lo tzas hameis u'achnasas kala. It says we stop learning for hotzas hameis, for taking out the dead, and for achnasas kala, and for helping someone get married. But for us, the point is for hotzas hameis, for taking out the dead. So we see that we would stop learning for a meis mitzvah. Avoda u'meis mitzvah. What about service in the Beis HaMikdash and meis mitzvah? Which one takes precedence? So meis mitzvah, again, caring for this corpse that nobody's there to care for, would take precedence over avoda, over service in the Beis HaMikdash. How do I know? Mivela achoso. From the pasuk that by a nazir, that says that he should not become tamei. A nazir is not allowed to become tamei meis. He can't become ritually impure from contact or being under the same roof as a dead body. And it doesn't matter if it's a family member or not. The pasuk says, le'aviv u'limo, to his father and his mother, le'achiv u'achoso, to his brother and his sister, lo yitama lahem, b'mosam, he should not become tamei. A nazir is not allowed to become tamei even during his term of nazirus, or hers, even to a family member. Now, so what? So we have the following brisa. D'tanya v'la'achoso, it says in the pasuk, and to his sister, ma talmud lomar. Why does the Torah need to say this? And before we go on, let's just give a little background. So Rashi gives us some background here that by a nazir, the pasuk already tells us al kol nefesh meis lo yavo, that nazir can't come in contact with any meis. Al kol nefesh meis, any dead. So that seems to include even a family member. So why does the Torah need to go and recount, and not to the father, not to the mother, not to the brother, not to the sister? I already know that. It says, don't become tamei to any meis, any dead. So each one is coming to teach me something. So it works as follows. It's a sifri, it's a medrash halacha that says that when it says le'aviv, to his father he shouldn't become tamei, that it's coming to infer something. You shouldn't become, a nazir can't become tamei to his father. Aval metamehu meis mitzvah. Again, I'm in Rashi here, not in the Gemara, but he could become tamei to a meis mitzvah. That's what's coming to infer. Why the extra? And don't become tamei to your father. I know that. So it's coming to say that you can't become tamei to your father, but you could become tamei to a meis mitzvah, to a corpse who nobody will care for it. Okay, but why does it say li'imo, to his mother? What's that adding? So what it's adding is, even if he was not only a nazir, who's not allowed to become tamei, but even he was also a kohen, who's also not allowed to become tamei, although a kohen could become tamei to his mother, but so he has these two holinesses that generally don't allow him to become tamei, so he can still become tamei for a meis mitzvah. And then it says l'alchiv, to his brother. What's that adding? That not only if he was a kohen, but even if he was a kohen gadol, it's to his brother he doesn't become tamei, but he becomes tamei. A nazir who's a kohen gadol can still become tamei to a meis mitzvah. And then it says la'achoso, and to his sister. Well, what's that coming to add? We've made the most extreme case. So what we do in such a situation where we have another pasuk and it's coming and there's nothing to say about it over here. There's nothing to add over here. So we have a concept that imengo iming for this. If it's not meant for this, it must be coming for even more expansive areas. So it must be coming for other cases. What other case would it be adding? That even someone else should not become tamei for his sister, but he could become tamei for a meis mitzvah. Who's that? So So that's where we pick back up in the Gemara. It says, V'la'achoso, unto his sister. La'achoso hu de'engel matame. One should not become tame for their sister. Sorry, I skipped. Hare. It says, V'la'achoso, ma tamod lomar. What's it coming to tell you? Hare, shayahole lishlot es pischot. It's talking about someone who's on the way to shecht his karban pesach. A karban pesach is what we call an aseh sheyesh bo karis. If one is able to bring a karban pesach and does not, they're chayiv karis. Spiritual excision. Vilamo is or to give their son a bris, which also for a person who doesn't have a bris, it's an aseh sheyesh bo karis. They get karis for that. So these are very serious asehs. Somebody's on the way to do them. Vishama shemeis lomeis, and then he hears that someone has died. So yachol yetame. So you might say he should go become tameh. Amar to go yitame. No, it says no, don't become tameh. Even even if it's his sister, he should not stop doing his mitzvah, which he has to do, and go become tameh. But yachol k'shem she'eino matame la'achoso kach eino matame l'meis mitzvah. Now you might think that just like you shouldn't become tameh for your sister in this situation, he shouldn't become tameh for a meis mitzvah, where there's nobody to take care of the corpse. Talmud Lomer, that's why the Torah says, V'la'achoso, and to his sister. He shouldn't become tameh. La'achoso hu de'engel matame. He shouldn't become tameh for his sister. Aval matame l'meis mitzvah. But he should become tameh for a meis mitzvah. So what this teaches me is, even if somebody's on the way to bring their karban pesach, they should not become tameh for their sister, but for a meis mitzvah, if there's a corpse that nobody can care for, they should become tameh. So we see that if you have avoda, a karban, versus meis mitzvah, the meis mitzvah takes precedence. Okay, so that was all on the list of pshita. That was all on the list of things that Rava already knew. Now, but Rava asked the following: Mikra Megillah or meis mitzvah? What if you have reading the Megillah, which so far has trumped everything, and you have meis mitzvah, which has trumped everything? Meaning, Mikra Megillah trumped both avoda and Talmud Torah, and meis mitzvah trumped both avoda and Talmud Torah. What happens when these two clash? You have Megillah or you have meis mitzvah. Which one takes precedence? Hey minayu adif. Which is more precedent? Do you say Mikra Megillah adif mishum pirsumei nisa? Do you say Mikra Megillah is better because it involves pirsumei nisa, publicizing the miracle of Purim? Oh, Dilma, or maybe meis mitzvah adif. Maybe meis mitzvah, taking care of a corpse that nobody will take care of, takes precedence. Mishum kavod abrios. Because of kavod abrios, of honoring the honor of people, the simple, basic, decent respect of people. So Basar Debaya Hadar Pashta. After Rava posed this question, he himself answered it. Meis mitzvah adif. Meis mitzvah must be better. How does he know? Da Amar Mar, because we have a statement, Gadol kavod abrios. Kavod abrios is so great and so important. Shedocha es lo saseh Shabbatorah, that there are situations where it will override even a lo saseh, even a negative commandment. So, and that's a big deal. To override a negative commandment is another level. To not do a positive commandment is one thing, but to override a negative commandment is another thing. Rashi gives the example that it's the negative commandment of not ignoring a lost object. You're not allowed to turn away from a lost object. But for kavod abrios, if it's beneath somebody's kavod, it's an older person or something, and to start bending down to pick up this object is going to be a dent in their honor, and it would be a lack of kavod abrios, then they don't have to. So kavod abrios can override a lo saseh, then certainly you can override an aseh, a positive commandment, a mitzvah d'Rabbanan, a mitzvah of Megillah. Fine. Okay, now the Gemara returns to something that it mentioned at the bottom of Beis Amud Beis, which was that the Gemara there said that from the pasuk of Medina, V'ir V'ir, in every province, every city, we learn the following, and actually our Gemara will quote it, Gufa. So let's examine the words themselves, which was Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi said, Krach v'chol hasamuch lo, v'chol hanira imo nidon kikrach. A city and anything that's, or a walled city, anything that's near it, kol hasamuch lo, v'chol hanira imo, and anything that can be seen with it is nidon kikrach. It's considered like the walled city. And Tanan, we taught, Samuch afal b'shein onira, if it's nearby, even if it's not visible, and nira afal b'shein samuch, and if it's visible, even if it's not so close. So the Gemara actually back on Beis Amud Beis, 2b told us the distance. It said the distance, what's considered near? The Gemara said within a mil. Within a mil, 18-minute walk, so a little less than a mile. So fine. So we have what that pasuk is teaching me, that a walled city, and including the walled city is anything that's near, anything that's visible, and it's visible even if it's not near, and near even if it's not visible. Okay. Says the Gemara, Bishlam near afal b'shein samach. I understand you can have a situation of something that's something that's visible, even if it's not so close. Mishkach hasla, you can have the case, that, let's say the walled city is sitting on top of a mountain, so then you can see it from a distance, you can be very far away, you can still see it. So that's a case that they will also read on the same day, because they can see the walled city. How are you going to have a case of something very close that you can't see it? If you're close, you should be able to see it. So Rabbi Yirmiyah, sheyosheves b'nacha. The same cases where it's in a valley. The city, the walled city, let's say, is in a valley, and it could go. I don't know if it really makes a difference which one is. If one of them can see the other, then the other one could see it. Usually would be. So if one of them is in the valley, so then they're out of sight. They're out of the line of sight. And as long as they're close, they're within a mil, they would still be able to read on the same day, on the 15th. Okay. Ve'amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. And now that we quote Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, let's quote him for another statement. Krach sheyashav l'sof hukaf. If you have a walled city that was first settled and then they put the wall up, nidon kikfar. That's not a walled city. That is a kfar. That's just a large city. And they would read, there's a question here with regards to what is this halacha being taught. Is it a Megillah halacha, or is this a halacha relating to the laws of Batei Arechama, which is what the pasuk that's going to quote. Pasuk it quotes is, my taima, why is it that a city that's first settled and then the wall is built is considered like a unwalled city? Because the pasuk says, V'ish ki yimkar beis moshav ir choma. If a man sells his dwelling in an ir choma, in a city that has a wall, and the implication of a city that has a wall is that it was first a city, and then it had a wall. So shehukaf u'b'sof yashav, that it was. It's the opposite. It's a base moshav of a ir choma, of a city that's walled, and that was, and it's base moshav. It's settled in an ir choma, in a walled area. So it's walled, and then they put up the houses. Shehukav u'b'sof yashav. It was first they put up the walls, and then they settled in it. V'lo sheyashav u'b'sof hukav. and not that it was settled and then they put up the wall. So it's saying the definition of a walled city is only if the wall was there before the city, which doesn't seem like it's so likely to happen too often, but okay. The assumption is that maybe that's what they used to do. Now there's a question, is this talking about a halacha of Megillah, or is it talking about a halacha with regards to what the pasuk is actually talking about, which is that in Parshas Bahar we have a concept of batei arechama. There's a halacha that if you sell a house that's in a walled city, so the pasuk there says you have 1 year to buy it back and to redeem it. You get to redeem it for 1 year, and if you don't, then it's completely sold until completely sold actually. It doesn't even go back at Yovel. So it's completely sold after that. So you have 1 year to sell it. So that's a special halacha, 1 year to buy it back. A special halacha for batei arechoma, houses that are in walled cities. But what's a walled city? The Gemara is deducing it's only a city that first had a wall and then they put up the houses. Okay, that's how Rashi learns. Rashi says that's what it's talking about. Tosfos says no. Tosfos says it's talking about for Megillah. It's talking about for Megillah that for Megillah, who reads on the 15th, we learn from there what the definition of walled city is, and it's only a city that first had a wall and then they put up the houses. Fine. V'am Rabbi Shua ben Levi, and another statement of Rabbi Shua ben Levi, Krach she'en bo asar batlanin, nidon kikfar. So we talked about in the Mishnah, in the first Mishnah, large cities and villages. How do you define a large city? How do you define a village? So the answer, he says, is a city that does not have asar batlanin, literally like 10 idlers. They're not idlers. They're sitting in the shul and they don't work. They have to be available for minyanim, and because you always want for the shechina to come into the shul, you always want a minyan there. So if you were a large enough city, you could have 10 batlanim. You could have 10 people who sit in the shul. So that's the definition of a large city. If you don't have 10 people who can idle in the shul and wait there, make sure there's always a minyan there, so then you are a village. And I guess then subject to or at least the option to read early sometimes. Ask the Gemara, Ma'ik Mashmon, what's Rabbi Shua ben Levi teaching me? Tanina. We learned it. It's actually the next Mishnah. The next Mishnah says, on Daf Hey Amar Aleph, but we quote it here, Ezo hi ir gedola. What is a large city? Kol sheyesh ba asar batlanim. Any city that has 10 idlers, 10 of these guys, that's a large city. Pachos mikan arei kfar. And if it has less than that, it's a village. So why does Rabbi Shua ben Levi have to come and tell me this? It's a Mishnah. So the answer is, says the Gemara, Krach itztrichle. What it has to tell me it for a krach. A krach is like I guess like a mid-sized city. And people gather there, meaning it's not really a village. It's like a mid-sized city. What did our Mishnah say? Our Mishnah referred to ayaros gedolos. So we have a kfar. A kfar is a village. We have ayaros gedolos, big cities. An ir gadol, a big city. Now we have something called a krach. A krach is a place, Rashi says, where there's markets there. That's where people gather from all places, and it actually is bigger than a ir gadol, than a large city, but it's kind of not like a permanent city. They have markets set up there. So, afal gav de miklai le me'alma, even though people gather there from all places, and there's a lot of people not working right now, but since they're not since they're not set there, then it's not considered a large city. It's kind of like a pop-up town, I guess. But that would not be considered a large city. The Rabbi Shua ben Levi, and Rabbi Shua ben Levi also said, Krach shecharav lo sof yashav, you don't get krach. If you have a city that was destroyed and then resettled, it's like a krach. Now, what do we mean? My charav, what do we mean it was destroyed? What's the significance? If it just means there were houses, then they weren't, and they were again. Like what that wouldn't mean much. So what does it mean? Ilay macharvu chomosav. If you tell me what it means is if you had a city that was walled, the walls got destroyed and then rebuilt. So then yashav in lo yashav lo. It's only if they rebuild the city, resettle it, that it's considered a walled city. But Tanya, we have a brisa. Rabbi Eliezer Rabbi Yossi bar Yossi Omer. Rabbi Eliezer, the son of Yossi, says. Asher lo choma, it says, again in the context of Batei Ari Choma, of these walled cities in Parashas Bahar, it says that has a wall, and we learn out, Af al pi she'ein lo achshav. So it says there, V'kama bais asher b'ir asher lo choma, that the house that's in the city that has a wall will stay. And we can learn from there, even if it doesn't have one now, it just used to have one. I guess because the pasuk is talking there about that it's going to remain in the possession of the buyer forever, so it's not necessarily going to always have a wall, but it says it's going to remain with him. So it's even if it used to have a wall and doesn't have one now. So to here by Megillah, as long as it used to have a wall, then we don't care if it's rebuilt or not. So when Rabbi Shua ben Levi says here that a city that was destroyed and then rebuilt is like a city, he must not be talking about destroyed, meaning the wall was destroyed and then rebuilt, because it doesn't matter if it was rebuilt or not. So elamai charav, so what we mean it was destroyed, shecharav me'asar batlanim. What it means is it lost its 10 idlers. Like we said, to be a large city, you have to have these 10 batlanim. And what it's telling me is, if it shrunk down, it didn't have them. So then it got the status of a village. But now it grew again, it was resettled, and now they have asar batlanim again, so it goes back to having the status of an ir gedola, a large city, which would only read on the 14th and never earlier than that. Okay, and we'll continue with more statements from, at least one more statement from Rabbi Shua ben Levi next time.